Today I would like to talk about a topic that was one of the comments I got in one of my videos. And in the first place, I thought it's maybe not so interesting to talk about stems, but the more I was thinking about that, the more things have come to my mind that I would love to share with you and get your thoughts on. So let's talk about stems. And by the way, thanks for asking that. And I'm really appreciating all the comments I get, and also read everything and try to answer everything as good as I can. The first thing I did was like checking up where the name stem was coming from. I remember, I think it was from Pro Tools or some other tools, obviously to export audio tracks, but why stems? So I looked it up what it means in German. Okay, never mind. Don't care just what it means in German. In the end, it's not just about having one audio track or instrument printed into one WAV file. It could also be a complete bus or subgroup, a mix down or mix group or group of mixes, everything together with the intention to replicate the thing that you have in your DAW, in your digital audio workstation, to another place as good as possible. So in a nutshell, the idea is to export the tracks from your DAW into WAV files that you then can input somewhere else again. The most obvious reason, of course, to do so is if you want to collaborate with some other DJ or producer or label, and you want to make sure that he or she can just import the tracks without really knowing your setup. And that's sometimes challenging, but we will come to this in a second. Then the second reason, that for me, this is one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing stems. I'm using them for backups and as an archive. So just by definition, and one of my routine is once I released a track or an album or an EP, I'm exporting all the tracks I have in there as WAV audio files so that I can make sure that I can still open the track in the far future. Because you can be pretty sure that maybe you are able to open the Ableton Live project or the Logic project, but you can be very sure that your VST plugins are out of date, or you don't have the correct version, or your samples have moved around. So there are many reasons why your project might not open as it was like in the day when you were working on the project. So therefore it makes sense to always export your tracks as well for backup purposes. And last but not least, I was thinking about live performances. I remember watching the Giuseppe Ottaviani live set tutorial videos he did, and how he was explaining that. And basically a lot of stuff he's doing was triggering stems from his track or some remixes he was doing, which totally makes sense because you might not need all the synthesizers on stage because you don't want to carry the hardware with you, or you don't want to load this heavy loaded plugin like, for example, Faceplant, which is really crazy, or the Access Virus emulator I was big in one of my videos. So therefore it makes sense to print the track into a stem and just replay the WAV file, and then can do all the madness what you can do with an audio file in your live show. So how does it work? Basically in your DAW, you click on export as stems or export all individual tracks. But let me show you this just for a second so that we're all on the same side what we're talking about. So my current weapon of mass creation is Ableton Live, obviously. And let me just open a project I got from Ecologies, and it's called Voicemail. So what he sent was like some stem files, and they are in a very generic format. Let me show that to you. Here, Ecologies, Voicemail, samples, imported, and you get the idea. It's like around 20 tracks. And he exported me the chords, the bass, you name it. So, and yeah, a summary. So the idea is that I would be able just to drag and drop this into my DAW of choice, and then I should hear the same theoretically what he was doing in his DAW, and that's the idea of stems. So I was doing this and cleaning this a little bit up. This is currently how the track looks like. I already removed some silence from some other tracks. I also implemented my color coding, which means like the purple or pink is effects. Then here the bluish everything melodic related. Yellow is all the drums, and finally red is basically the bass. So you see plenty of things to do. I just imported it, and also my mixer looks quite clean. There's nothing fancy ongoing currently, but I'm able to do so. Pressing Shift Command R or Shift Control R on Windows, and rather than exporting here the master, this is usually what I'm doing, exporting PCM or MP3. You click on all individual tracks, and what then Ableton is doing, taking like also the subgroups like group drums here, for example, in my case, and others and export this one into individual tracks, obviously. Now, in the past, I was more on Logic. So let's open an old Logic project of mine. So just go here to one of my external hard drives. And let's go, let's say, 2012. And August. So this is over a year old. So I have a track called Fateless. Fateless is a Logic project. So let's open Logic, see what happens. With my project, I never touched for over 11 years. So Logic is saying that projects created in previous versions of Logic are not compatible and therefore have to be saved in a new version. So let's do so. And plugin is already missing. In this case, it's not so important because it was just Maxoscope. It's an oscilloscope I was using in the past. And let's listen to that. Okay, nice, but rather simple riff I was doing back then. So let's say in this case, it's just, I have already 3 tracks. Usually you press Ctrl B, right, for bounce and export everything to PCM or MP3, but then you just have the mix down. So what you're going to do here is export all tracks as audio files. And then here Logic is a little bit more complex. You can also add here your elements to the naming convention and have, several other settings. More or less the same like Ableton Live. So of course there are some challenges, like I said already before. If you think of subgroups, for example, it's quite sure what's ongoing. Like I expect a subgroup is summarizing everything that is within this group. But if you think, for example, about some more complex routing in your DAW or in your mixer, like parallel compression or another aux channel interacting with another one, like a delay with a reverb, and then this is kicking in with some side compression of your compressor and then a kick and so on. I'm then even not sure if Logic is considering that sidechain from that kick, for example, whether it should process it or not. So this is where it's getting complex. Again, with your DAW of choice, you have to figure out how that is working or not. Another scenario I have in mind is your master. So usually you might have already some plugins on your master bus, for example, a compressor or even a hardware compressor in the loop like this 3630 because your name is Daft Punk. That's of course not easy then to export stems, because how do you get the sum effect of the compressor or the equalizer into your stems? So always consider the unmastered versions or the tracks without any stuff going on your master. So when I'm exporting my tracks for my backup or archive purposes, I always export the unmastered versions, obviously. You might have some different mixing setups in mind. So in my theory, of course, I'm just talking about digital audio workstations in the digital domain. And yes, I know there are discussions ongoing, like if this one DAW sounds exactly similar like another one, but I don't want to open this topic here right now. But of course, what can come to your mind are analog mixers, because they might summarize things differently than your digital DAW, for example. Nevertheless, in the end, it doesn't really matter, or I think it's not that important to have the exact replication of your track, what you were doing, because always the goal is to export your things and share it with somebody, like maybe your own person in the future, and just import the stuff without thinking too much and then getting best results as possible. So those were my thoughts on stems, and maybe I was missing something, then please drop a comment in there. I would love to have a discussion about this topic, because I just realized that not everyone having the same understanding like I have, or maybe some other people I'm collaborating with. And thanks for tuning in, and talk to you soon. Bye.